Hello. Welcome to the Empowered Artist Collective podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Apple, a multi-hyphenate actor, educator, acting coach, writer, dog mom, and founder of this vibrant community that champions artists as they carve out their own unique paths in this wild industry. Whether you're just starting out, in the thick of it, or seeking a bit of artistic fuel to expand your toolbox, you're in the right place. In this space, we'll have honest conversations, share actionable strategies, tips, and resources, and delve into the messy yet beautiful journey of living a sustainable, creative life. We unmask the reality of life as an artist, from navigating career highs and lows to nurturing your full human well-being. I chat with women and non-binary guests who share their personal stories, helpful learnings, and hearts to help you unlock your artistic potential, expand your knowledge, and show up fully and fearlessly in your artistry and daily life. Before we dive into this week's conversation, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If today's chat resonates with you, please leave us a review. It helps us reach even more incredible artists just like you. And hey, feel free to spread the love. Share this podcast with a friend or post it on your socials, making sure to tag at Empowered Artist Collective and at @JenniferApple_ so we can chat with you there. All right, grab a cup of something cozy, settle in, and let's get to it. How can you choose repertoire that reflects who you are, not how others define you or what others expect of you? In this episode, I sit down with voice teacher, pedagogue, and researcher Mariana Elosúa Serna to explore culturally responsive teaching and how identity, culture, and personal experience can shape a more empowering approach to choosing material. Drawing from her thesis work and her 4 pillars of repertoire framework, Mariana offers practical tools for teachers and students alike, from thoughtful intake forms that center the student's experience and interests to strategies like student veto power and collaborative rep approach. We talk through parallels with my monologue sourcing for clients and the ways we can use our curiosity to lead us down exploratory rabbit holes. Whether you're a performer or educator, this conversation invites you to choose material that aligns with how you see yourself and not how others define you, as that is an extension of your voice, your values, and your story. Enjoy. Mariana Elosúa Serna, welcome to the space.
Thank you so much.
For anybody who does not know you, who are you today?
Today I am a woman who loves life. I am a teacher, a voice teacher. I'm a pedagogue and a researcher. And I don't know, a friend to anyone who wants to be a friend.
I love it. I love it. I am excited to have this conversation with you because of the work that you have been doing with pedagogy, with voice and vocal and song repertoire. I feel like there's some sort of synergy here between the work that you do and the work that I do with monologue sourcing. So I'm really excited to get into all of that. I'm curious, the origin story of how you got into the work that you are doing.
Yes, I think it's a very interesting story just because when I started my master's, which was in musical theater vocal pedagogy, most of the people in my group were already in the music path. They did their bachelor's in music or bachelor's in fine arts. And I came from a bachelor of arts in international relations. So something that's totally different to music or musical theater. But I've always done it as a side thing. And it wasn't until my master's that I started focusing as something that is my main thing.
Why did you want to go back to do that, or what was the pivot moment for you?
So I think that many people might resonate with this, but my parents were definitely study something that will give you money or that will set you up in life, and sometimes the arts is undervalued, I think, and but they have always been very supportive. So they said, after you study your major, you can do whatever you want and we will support you with it. And that's how I then pivoted into actually doing what I love, which is musical theater.
So you always kind of knew in the back of your brain, you're like, all right, I'm going to do this. And then I'm eventually going to go for the thing that I love for my master's.
Yes. And I will say that even though I didn't do music in undergrad or anything, everything that I did was really helpful because everything that I learned there, I put it into practice. And I think that it has to do a lot with the research that I do. The reason why I got into repertoire and all of that was because I feel that when I would like do workshops, I would always get like sent to like, oh, you would be an excellent Maria from West Side Story. And like,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, you haven't even heard me sing. Like I
Mm-hmm.
usually like don't sing head voice. But like
Mm-hmm.
people would say you would be like a great Maria or you would be a great Mina. And I would be like, okay, why? Like
Mm-hmm.
obviously like I do love those characters and everything. But there's like a reason too, like why people like would shove me into that, and that's because I am Latina. And so I've always loved culture, and my international relations background like really helped me open my eye to like how different cultures are. But now like when talking about repertoire, like um I wanted to do something that had to do with like culture and something that's like really passionate for me, that it's like okay, I want representation, but also is all representation like accurate and good
Yeah.
representation, and does it like resonate with me as it would resonate with someone else, and
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. So that's when I really got into like okay, there's a lot of like musical theater repertoire, but like why am I always singing this? Is it something that I want to sing? Is it something
Mm-hmm.
that everyone else wants to sing because they're part of that cultural group? And yeah.
Amazing. So the work that you have been doing now with your master's, your thesis, tell me a bit more about that.
Yes. So I finished my master's last year,
Mm-hmm.
and so for our final project we had to do a thesis, and it took maybe a whole year to really do that work. And in that work I basically had to choose a topic, and for me it was like okay, it had to do with something with vocal pedagogy. So I was like okay, I want it with culture. So I was like researching about cultural responsive teaching. It is like a teaching method that was coined by Gloria Latson Billings. And it's just about the validation of the student, like centering on like what the student and what their the things on the outside and the inside, like teaching them through that, like who that student is
Mm-hmm.
and like their experiences, like past, present, and future. And so I I chose my topic, which was on like how people, how individuals might be more motivated to sing specific songs if they resonate to their culture. And I specifically did it on Latinx people because I am Latina, and so I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, I think I already have like okay a little bit of a head start because
Mm-hmm.
I understand my culture and it might be easier. But yeah, basically I did interviews on people and talk about their experiences, and I gave them different repertoires, and they had to categorize them into like four different categories, because I think that sometimes teachers or mentors might be like, okay, this is a song that might be good for you, but like, is it actually like representative of me? Is it like stereotypical of me?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you just assigning me this song because you think that I am ethnically ambiguous enough for me to like sing this song that I don't even know anything about?
Mm-hmm.
So I started researching on all of those things, and like many people started to tell me, I found that like, you know, my teachers tell me like you should sing this because BFA programs are looking for people who are diverse and this and that, and it'll show off that you are diverse, you're not
Mm-hmm.
white. And so I did that, and then I wrote my thesis. I went to do some presentations. I went to the MTEA in England. I went to PAVA. I went to the Voice Foundation in the States, and you know, I talked about all of these things. And then yeah, I continued researching because I am now a postmaster fellow.
Amazing. I want to get into these 4 pillars that you were talking about, and whether you went into your thesis being like, okay, here are these people that I'm interviewing, and now as I'm giving them this rep, now they're dividing it into these categories themselves, or is it more that as you started to have these interviews with folks, you started to see a theme and it was like, oh, it seems like these things are 4 pillars, and now let me assign them. Let's break down what these 4 pillars are, how they came to be, and how you go about, I guess, putting things within these different categories.
Yes, of course. So, as I mentioned, I think repertoire is not a binary. And in a world where people like are looking for like either you fit into somewhere or you don't fit into somewhere, um, I think that we have to accept that there's a spectrum and that it is very individualized to the person who is right in front of you. And so, yes, I have these 4 pillars, these 4 categories that I presented, and these serve as a framework for teachers. But in the end, it's giving the power to the students to choose the category that fits to them. So in these 4 categories, I have the first one, which is culturally non-specific repertoire. So I have definitions for each of them. And in the culturally non-specific, I defined it as repertoire that is considered as any popular repertoire within the musical theater back canon, where the culture does not drive the plot forward. And this means that culture is not pivotal. It's not a pivotal theme to the story, as well. It is not an essential part of the character. So basically here is that if I were to play this character and someone else from a different culture were to play this character, the story wouldn't be changed because the story is not centered on like being a Latina or being Black or being Asian. So, that is what I would say culturally non-specific is. And then we go into culturally representative. And for this is repertoire that demonstrates attributes of a specific cultural group where the group and community can feel identified with it. And I specifically wrote that the people who are writing these things are people within the community. So if I'm writing about a Latina show, I am also part of it. It not always has to be, but I put that as a framework for people to be more conscious of it's easier. It's easier when you're writing about like your own experience for it to be actually accurate. And then we have the culturally stereotypical category, which is any repertoire that displays any kinds of generalizations of the addressed community. And within this category, the composers and the lyricists are outside of the community. And then the last category is the culturally sensitive. So the culturally sensitive category comprises of any songs that include characters or themes of a specific culture that are outside of the person who is singing that repertoire. So I am singing a song that does center on culture, but I am not part of that culture.
And the piece would be reflective, like saying in that, like, I don't know much about this culture and I'm talking about it, or are you not self-aware in that way in the piece?
Well, it's not about not being self-aware, but if I would sing a role in Dreamgirls or in The Color Purple, like, I do not, like...
As in you are, I guess, maybe appropriating in some way. You are taking it.
I am appropriating. So that is why it is sensitive. But yeah.
Got it. Okay. I think this is a really helpful framework for us to kind of get into the weeds because, again, as I mentioned at the top, I do this work especially for, folks for BFA programs, for MFA programs, but from the monologue perspective. Yeah. And, it's so funny in however 120 plus episodes of this podcast, I've never really talked much about the monologue sourcing that I do. I mention it briefly and I talk about it on other podcasts. And so I'm really excited to be able to like kind of talk about this, convergence with songs, with monologues here with you. The way in which I approach my monologue sourcing process for clients is not from type. I think that's a thing that, I am on a mission to like I really want us to like move away from it, the typecasting of it all, the boxing people in. I think labels can be very dangerous, certainly if they come from external folks as opposed to from an internal, if somebody wants to be like, these are the ways in which I identify and self-identify, amazing. But for others to put folks into boxes that they may or may not resonate with, I think is kind of akin to what you're referring to, which is like, as you just said with your teacher, being like, oh, you should sing Maria, you should sing Nina. And it's like, why? Just because I'm Latina? That's why you believe this? Versus, are you identifying with this material? So I too come at my monologues sourcing from a place of really understanding and who this person is. And the way that the process works for me is, I meet with somebody, usually virtually, and I kind of guide them through a series of questions, ultimately to really understand who they are as a human being. Like, your family life, your friend life, your love life. How do you identify? What are you into? What are you not into? What are your pet peeves? What are your hobbies? Like things that are about like you, religion or not, like, these politics, like things that nobody really, often talks about maybe to a stranger, in which case sometimes that's me. And then here you are kind of sharing, who you are with me so that then I go off and find pieces that are reflective of what you have shared with me about how you see and view the world. So that when I'm bringing material to you, it is not because I like see you looking a certain way or I assume something about you and then I think that this piece would then serve you in the way in which you might need it. And, obviously I'm not perfect, but I'd like to think I'm pretty good at what I do. And I've been doing it for many, many years for many, many clients in all sorts of capacities, whether it's for schooling or for their regular audition life. But I really do pride myself in this, in like really trying to meet the human being from where they are. And I love this framework because, in some ways, I guess I do operate with this in mind. But to have these 4 pillars to really be like, okay, how are we putting these things into spaces as I'm looking through material to give to folks, I think is a really wonderful and helpful framework to make sure that I am being very purposeful and self-aware around the way in which I'm pulling material.
Hi, actor friends, talking to you. If finding the perfect monologue has you feeling stuck, I've got just the thing. I've put together a free monologue selection toolkit just for you. It's packed with resources, free and paid options, plus tips for choosing, editing, and customizing pieces to showcase you. Head over to jenniferapple.net/freebie and stop avoiding the auditions that ask for a monologue or waiting for the perfect piece to simply fall into your lap. Dive into this free toolkit that I set up just for you that'll set you up to feel agency over your process and artistry. That's jenniferapple.net/freebie and get started on finding your next go-to monologue.
So I'm curious for you when it comes to empowering students, certainly with their teachers, and the opposite of teachers with their students. Do you have a methodology for I guess the picking of it? Is it like, all right, I'm thinking only ever really about these specific categories and these are the ones that are important? Or as I'm picking a song, I am now putting it into a category and then seeing if that works? Like what is the methodology that you're using now that you have these 4 pillars?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I feel like these are like very specific to like when you're like entering the world of like, okay, I am assigning songs, repertoire that have to do with culture. Mm-hmm. And I have to understand that I might not know that culture. Like every student I have is so different. I have students that are from Mexico, but I also have students from the state, as I have students from like different parts of the world or different cultures that I might not know.
Or so, even I would imagine just like, if we're just, and I'm obviously like, I am not of Mexican descent in any way. And so it's certainly not my culture, but I would imagine even within Mexican culture, it's not a monolith, right? Like if you're from Mexico City, that's very different than if you're from, Tulum, which is very different than if you're from, like that in and of itself, to recognize that just because you are from a country doesn't mean that in and of itself is also a monolith, and that your heritage, your individualized, upbringing might also be very different if parents immigrated or if they were born elsewhere or if one side is from here or the other side is from there. Or I imagine all of that amalgamation is also something that just because you're from one label of a place also means that we can't just
put you in that category too. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's why I think it's very important to understand the difference between culture and identity, because you might be of a specific culture, but you might not resonate with that culture. And also every culture like is so different from like, yeah, like the different regions and everything. So yeah, exactly. Like for me in the Heights is definitely like something that I love in the Heights, and I love the music, but I cannot resonate with like the main story, which is about like a first generation or second generation Latina. Like I am not that. I come from a different country. I have like different things that that I go through. But yeah, when specifically like choosing repertoire for like students, how to make sure that we're like honoring what they want. Just because if you give songs that are songs they like, they're gonna engage more in it, and then they're gonna practice more and they're gonna do better. The intake forms, getting to know what the student likes. Obviously, I feel like no one owes you telling you like, oh, this is who I am, this and that. Like no one owes you that. But like if they want to like share out, if you have an intake form, it's like, okay, like what are the things you like to do? Is like culture something that's important to you? Like is it something that you like talking about? Like getting to understand that side, then I think that's like the first part, knowing that the student is comfortable with it, because there's always like this student teacher relationship where the teacher is always going to have more power than the student. It's a hierarchy, and even though like we might like try and tone everything down, there's still like this relationship
that's also for the most part, in many circumstances, there's a financial give and take. It's a transaction in some way too, you know.
Exactly.
Yes, maybe in a school setting you're not directly handing your choir teacher you know, cash, but there is still a transaction that the teacher is being paid to be there, and therefore, you know, or you've paid, your parents have paid, or you've paid, you know, or like, yeah, like an annual tuition has been paid to the institution, and therefore that's why you're there. There's a transaction usually in a teacher-student relationship that I think is also just worth mentioning too.
Yeah, I completely agree. And yes, so like knowing if the students like what the student likes to sing about, who they are as a person, and also like who they would like to explore to be. Like, because something about acting and like singing is like you don't have to be like portraying someone who's 100% like you.
Right.
Like, but one thing that we do have to take into consideration is like how you look like is like, so hard to change. Like culture, like you're never gonna be able to take culture outside of you. It is a protected trait of you. And so I think that's why we have to be very conscious of like, okay, I am not giving someone a song just because they're like Latino, or just because they're Black, or just because they're Asian, or whatever it is. I'm not giving them a song that like everyone knows that, oh, like I don't know, like from Miss Saigon. I'm not gonna like be like, oh, here you go, like this is a song you would like be cast in it more likely than another person, so like here's a song. No, I have to know the student. And so I think most of all is, yes, intake form. But then the second thing that is very important is like giving the student the option to say no without without having to explain why.
Yeah.
And so there is this article that I read from Brian Manternoch, and it has to do with the student veto option. And this basically, as I said, is like just handing the student the autonomy to say no to a song, and I will not ask you why, and we will just pivot and change. And I think this just builds a collaborative model where the student can feel okay into taking the final decision. And it won't hurt me as a teacher, because sometimes it's like, oh, students might think, oh, like my teacher really thinks I'd be good in this, and I want to like please my
Yeah.
teacher, but it's like it's not something that I would feel like good singing in. So I think so. Yeah, just giving that autonomy to the student.
On your intake forms, do you have specific questions that you ask that you would share with us?
Something that's very important is just asking like, what do you love to do? Like who am I? And it's like super broad things like who am I? And people like will write like what they think, like who they think they are. 3 things that I like to highlight about myself when I meet someone. And I think that's something that's very important because it's like, what do you want to show to someone else about yourself? And so you get to know like, okay, like these are some of the things of who I am. But then it's like, okay, these are the things that I like to show someone else of who I am. And like, I think that's something that's just like very important.
Yeah, I do that too. I ask them to share 3 adjectives for how they think their close friends or people who love them would describe them. And then they ask them 3 adjectives that they would use to describe themselves. And I think it's actually a fascinating exercise that I invite anybody who's listening to do because people often, like just hearing it offhand, you're like, oh, these should probably be the same. Yeah. And more often than not, maybe there's like one that overlaps, you know, that like your friends think you're funny and you also think you're pretty funny. Yeah. Or, you know, your friends think you're really passionate and you also know you're really passionate. Like there's always one that tends to maybe be a little akin, but usually they tend to be different. And I say that with like no judgment whatsoever. And I also invite, you know, clients to embrace that with no judgment, because what it really does is it kind of, it's also your version of it, right? It's how you think other people experience you, which is a very interesting mind game because you're like, oh, this isn't how I am presenting. It's not who I am. It's not how I see myself, but it's how I think other people see me. And I think in some ways that question goes to like what could be problematic with these 4 categories, in that if people are receiving you in a certain way and then they're making assumptions about you, which you might even be aware of, how are we then, if we want to, changing that or not changing that? How are we embracing that if we want to, right? Like it's just information, but that information, when I ask it, it's often, I find that clients are always like, oh, interesting, you know, because I see myself a certain way. And yeah, my best friend definitely sees this part of me. Or when I show up, I tend to bring out this part of me. But again, it goes back to what you're saying of like, yeah, these are qualities. These aren't cultural identifiers necessarily, that people are self-ascribing to you, which is a very big distinction.
Yeah, no, and I hadn't thought of that, but I feel like also like putting that layer of like how your best friend would describe you, like, I would like to hope that everyone's best friend is like someone who will always cheer you on. So it will always be like in a positive light of like, okay, I show my best version to my best and also my worst
1,000%.
Version, and it's like you see the real me, and I think that's really cool.
You can take it on your intake form if it helps.
Yeah, I was like, I think I'm gonna put that in.
I love it. I love an example. How about you? I will be the teacher in this, and you will be the student in this. Can we kind of go through as like the worst and best scenario of like if I were to assign you songs based off of these 4 examples and like putting it into practice and just seeing how we can kind of engage in like a teacher-student dynamic for that. Does that work?
Yes, that totally works.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to try to like, you know, pull from the recesses of my brain being like the repertoire. Okay. So working from like the most problematic up to the best way of it all, right? You come in, I hear your accent and I just assume, this is going to make me sound like a terrible person, but I assume, oh, okay, so, you know, she's clearly not from here. I ask where you're from. You tell me. I put you under a generalized category of Latina. And now in my brain, I'm thinking nothing other than, you know, okay, this person is Latina, so clearly that's all she can do. And I then go and, as you said, give you a song from Dreamgirls because I think that makes sense, because if you're a different culture, then sounds like I'm literally cringing as I'm saying this. This is horrifying for me to say.
Yeah.
So if I were to give you a song from Dreamgirls, that would be culturally sensitive song material where I'm like not taking into account who you are. I'm not taking into account what the material is. And I'm just giving you a piece of material because I'm making an assumption about cultures generally. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah, you're giving me a song that has nothing to do with my culture, but because I am, let's say, outside of, what people would denote as like the white culture, then it's like, okay, no, yeah, you're culturally ambiguous enough. You can sing something that's different.
Okay.
Which has happened to me. And I would tell my professor, hey, like, oh, I didn't practice this song. Can we sing something else?
Yes.
And yeah, it's just like, okay, yeah, no.
In my mind, these ones feel more obvious than maybe the middle categories and certain, so how do I feel like this one for folks who maybe struggle with, speaking up for themselves or maybe navigating that teacher-student dynamic or the status dynamic of it, maybe it feels easier for them to be like, actually, this is so beyond inappropriate. What would be some of the ways in which you would potentially, but like, let's assume that somebody still is uncomfortable because it's so obvious that you're like, how is this even happening? Or whatever the reasons are. What would you suggest would be some ways as a student to be able to advocate for yourself in this dynamic?
Important question. I think a way for a person to advocate for themselves, well, other than saying like, I don't want to sing this, is like, if, let's say, the teacher is very unaware and like you have to, let's say, like maybe take more power yourself, like bring in a song that would like actually that you think could replace that song. I don't think that should be the student's work.
No.
But like if it were to be like worst case scenario, I'd say like bring in a song that has like, I don't know why the teacher is assigning you this. If it's like for like a specific part of like your voice range and all of that, choose a song that has to like tackles that specific part, and that will be like helpful into saying, hey, like I don't want to sing this song, but like, hey, we will still be able to. Yeah, although I think that's the teacher's responsibility.
1,000%. I was going to say, like, in that moment, arguably the teacher is giving you rep because you don't have the rep to choose from. And therefore, you're relying on a resource that you would hope would have more accessibility and knowledge. And so that is a really deeply disappointing situation. Are you finding that for the most part nowadays, people tend to not fall into this category as much?
I feel like people don't fall into this category as much maybe here in the States, but outside of the States, I talk with people like from different parts. I have friends from different countries, and they do talk about how like it's not a thing, and that like here in the States it's like super specific. Like it, what people would say, it's like too woke, and over there, like people like don't really take that into consideration a lot. And I do think that there's like certain, like, because when I did my thesis, I asked people like, would you sing this song? And then I asked them like, would you sing this in a musical? Would you sing this in like a cabaret? Would you sing this in your house? Like, what are the circumstances where you would sing the song?
Yeah.
And like for some people, like they would say like, yeah, I would practice this song in my voice studio, but I will not practice it outside.
Yeah.
And it really has to do with like what you're comfortable. And like as a teacher, like I would not feel comfortable giving like a specific song that is like outside of their culture to a student. So like also like you can say like, if you want to sing this at home, you can do that by yourself. But like me as a teacher, these are like my, like these are my pillars. This is what I believe in. Like just sticking to it, and just also the other way around.
Yeah.
Have you been using the same monologue for years? Are you gearing up to apply for BA, BFA, or MFA programs and need pieces for that process? Or maybe you just have no idea where to even start with monologue hunting? I get it. And that's why I offer monologue sourcing. This is a unique process where I find monologues chosen specifically for you. So many artists pick pieces based on external labels like type or for roles rather than finding material that represents who they truly are.
So here's how it works. We'll meet virtually and you'll share all about who you are, your passions, values, beliefs, and everything in between. Don't worry, I will help guide you through this process. Then I'll get to work finding monologues that fit you like a glove. With years of experience sourcing pieces for hundreds of artists, I've seen the difference it makes to have a monologue that genuinely feels like you. So, if you want to feel empowered about the monologues you bring into rooms and use for auditions, I would love to help you find them. And because you're a listener of the Empowered Artist Collective podcast, I'm offering an exclusive rate. Head to empoweredartistcollective.com/podcast promo to register and claim the special offer. That's empoweredartistcollective.com/podcast promo. I cannot wait to help you find monologues you absolutely adore. Great. Moving up the little scale here. We're culturally stereotypical. So what would be an example of this if I was your teacher and I was giving you a song, just knowing who you are based off of optics? What would be an example of me giving you a culturally stereotypical song?
I would say maybe like Don't Cry For Me, Argentina.
Okay.
From Evita. Just because, yeah, like people will be like, yeah, you're Latina, you can sing Evita, which I mean, I think the song is beautiful.
Yeah.
But like this, like the show itself, like is very inaccurate. Like even the way that it's painted, like
and that's because the writers, where it's like different from, say, In the Heights, where if we're talking like Nina versus, Ava, right? We're talking about like one is written by somebody from the community and one is not. And therefore that is what separates it from the stereotype versus the representative.
Like in like the framework version, yes. But like, okay. I still feel like, and this is what I saw with people, like, what could be stereotypical for me might not be stereotypical for someone else because they think that, and that's okay. And it's okay to like let the student choose, but I think it just gives like the teacher like, okay, there is a bigger chance that this song might feel stereotypical to the student. And then you talk to the student about it and they're like, actually, no, this feels representative or this feels stereotypical.
So these two potentially have a little bit of not overlap, but a more individual interpretation depending on the individual who is receiving the material.
Yeah.
Okay. And then culturally non-specific is, I'm giving you Memory from Cats, and you are a cat, and you are singing about your memories. This is not specific to your culture. It's such a touchy topic because depending on who else I would have in this conversation with us, people would interpret this a lot of different ways. And I know, I've had different conversations with friends of mine for various shows that, have had casting come out and we've been like, oh, you're not keeping this culturally honest, but you would never do this for another group of folks. Why is that? And how come we cannot speak on behalf of that? I've had this conversation many times with various shows around Jewish culture. And, there was a whole hullabaloo around, Fanny Bryce when the Funny Girl tour came out, and that, cultural representation. And that was a big conversation that was happening at that time. As there's like a huge piece of that arc there's a whole song where she wears bagels on her neck and, says, oi, oi, oi. And it's like, what stereotypes now are we portraying if we don't have an actual Jewish person or a person of Jewish cultural connection to be telling that? Are we perpetuating stereotypes, putting that into your categories? Like, what are we doing? And, it is an interesting and a very touchy and complicated conversation within casting specifically, and forget the rep part of it, but casting around how are we putting people into categories in order to cast them, quote unquote, accurately, or are we? And if we are, where do those intersections lie? And so, I'm not trying to solve this here between you and I, but it's naming the fact that at least when it comes to rep and when it comes to teaching and learning versus the casting of it, which is, I think, arguably more of what this conversation is, that is where you have a bit more autonomy to be able to be like, actually, well, I'm choosing this material for myself. this is why this feels good, or this is why it doesn't feel good, or this is why it doesn't align, or this is why it does align.
Yeah. Yes. No, I've had so many conversations, and then I'm like, am I backtracking? Am I doing like, yeah, I think it's a conversation. And obviously, like, I don't, as I mentioned, I don't think there's ever like a black or white answer, black or white answer. It's like everything is a spectrum. And I think it comes to like really like understanding and respecting and making sure that the things that are being written are like how you portray the characters and how it's being written. It is like respectful. And yeah, like something that's really important when like for teachers is like, okay, when am I assigning a song, do I know the context of the song? Do I know the context of the show? Who is the character? Like, what do they do? What do they represent? And if it has culture, like understanding what that culture is. Because a Mexican, am not gonna be like a Puerto Rican, or I'm not gonna be like a Dominican, or like a Venezuelan or Argentinian. It's gonna be so different. But there's like certain things that might be similar, but we're so different. So like understanding that it's like everyone is so different. And yeah.
Yeah, I think what you're also naming is an opportunity for simply more communication, which is frankly like what I just want to advocate all the time about everything always. But, you know, to have these conversations with your teacher, or if you are the teacher, to have these conversations with your student of like, hey, I am on a mission to really try to make sure that I am giving out material that feels in alignment with how you view yourself and the way in which you want to share of yourself. And the other way around too, of, hi, I am really trying to find rep that allows me to fully step into myself and express myself, so that when I am in these audition spaces, I feel confident, secure, and fully in alignment with who I am. And I think, you know, being able to have these conversations it feels so obvious, but I know for myself, you know, having taken voice lessons since I was a wee child, you know, I don't believe I've ever actually had that conversation with a voice teacher ever. I think a lot of the onus has fallen on me to be like, no, this doesn't feel comfortable, or actually, can we do this instead? Or maybe this isn't appropriate for this particular thing, but I guess I could practice this in a rehearsal space and no one ever sees the light of day other than me and you. But again, as you named earlier, then that falls on the student to have more knowledge as opposed to the teacher. But I do think that, again, offering this is just a framework to be thinking a little bit more cognizantly, and then to use this as a starting off point to be able to engage in these conversations really does, you know, hopefully move the needle in the way in which we are actually being inclusive in a very real way as opposed to an optics way. And arguably, that is the world that I'm trying to build and be a part of, which I know you are too.
Yes. Well, I think something that I really learned when I did my thesis is that people do not only want to be singing cultural material.
Yeah.
So making sure that I'm not just giving people like songs about Latinos or songs about Black people or songs about Asians. Like, okay, like look at the intake form. It literally tells you what they like and like who they are as a person. And then like being like, hey, like, do you have any dream roles? Do you have any like what is something that you want to work about your voice? I think that's something that you want to get better at. That's something that's really telling of like what songs to look for. As a teacher, like also like you listen to the student and it's like, okay, I think they have to work on this. But like a student might want to work on something different. And like trying to see like where there could be like an intersection. And also I think something that's really important is to like make sure to not assume just of like what you see on the outside.
For sure.
I think something that is really important is that people don't know that there's like an intersectionality in like so many things. people can be part of like different groups, can feel like they can feel identified with like different groups, um and might just like gravitate, and they might not appear it, and so just like knowing what they like, what they're like, I feel like
How they see themselves and actually asking them.
asking them. Yeah, I think asking them, and also like if you have a song that you want to sing, like this person is gonna be singing it in their house, so like I as a teacher like should also like be like, okay, no, you can't sing Defying Gravity, like they're gonna sing it, and I as a teacher should find a helpful way to get them towards that song, even if it's like super hard, like seeing all of that.
Yeah. Do you have like on the back end in your files, do you have things labeled under these different categories? I'm curious how you keep your rep.
Oh, I actually I don't have it. Just because I feel that would, I don't have it categorized just because that would only apply it for myself, not for other people. And I don't think I am that organized to keep things categorized for myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like, yeah, I just have like folders for like the different students of like what they're singing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that this is something that you need to create, but I do think, if you wanted to, I think this is like a very interesting format to create a little template, and then you can share with other teachers. But do with that as you please. I know, like for myself, I have this monologue freebie that is always in the show notes, and oftentimes like, an ad essentially, or like put in the middle of these episodes for people to download. That's just totally free. That helps guide them through finding monologues, for themselves if they didn't want to go the route of hiring me or another human being to help them find the pieces. And, there's so many different resources in that freebie around like where to look, whether it's free resources or paid resources or what have you. And then also different ways to like keep track of these pieces and things to think about while one is finding material. And I guess in my mind, there's probably obviously the offerings that I'm giving in my freebie aren't explicitly interchangeable for, songs, but I do want to offer that does exist for folks. And if they want to do some reverse engineering in their minds around like, okay, let me take this and then go find, these pieces. I think a lot of what ends up happening for me with my clients is I will give them, their 10 pieces. And again, a lot of it is based off of what their needs are and what they've requested of me, and certainly what they've shared to me about who they are. And then more often than not, a lot of it's like, oh, I love the way that this playwright writes. Let me go now and see what else this playwright has written. Where has this playwright been produced? Because those theaters are going to be interested in work similar to this playwright, and they're going to be, producing those kinds of work. And like, really, I think a lot of it does come down to the curiosity of an individual around like, okay, if I'm really wanting to find material that is specific to me, let me find and follow, like you were saying, the folks that are resonating with me and the kind of work that they're doing, or the backgrounds that they have that are maybe similar to mine, and then seeing the work that they're doing and following along for that journey and seeing where that work is then being produced, because it's probably other places and things that are being produced that are similar. And, I want, the reason that this conversation is happening, again, is not to like solve things or belittle other folks for not doing it in a certain kind of way, as opposed to really beginning to think in a way that hopefully invites more curiosity, more communication, more conversation, and more intentionality around the way in which we are finding material and choosing material for ourselves. Because ultimately, it's the calling card that you have in an industry where we don't have so much control. You get to decide, especially in an audition setting, how you want to show up in that room and what part of yourself are you sharing. It's an offering of the way in which you speak or the way in which you communicate, not like, let me flex everything. Maybe it could be, but more often than not, a monologue or, you choosing a song and singing from your book, like that is like, this speaks to me. This is how I communicate. This is a part of my identity that I want to share with you in this capacity. And more of an invitation around being curious about oneself And so I think this is a beautiful framework to get people to really focus in on that. And I love that. So thank you for sharing all of this.
Thank you so much. I just think it's very important to point out, like don't sing a song just because everyone expects you to sing a song.
Yeah.
Do it because you want to. And people will be able to see your the best version of yourself when you put out your best version.
I love it. Thank you so much for going on this little journey. For anybody who wants to work with you, who wants to learn more about the work that you're doing, who wants to get more clarity as a teacher or a student around these pillars, what within your boundaries are the best ways for people to find you and reach out?
Well, you can find me at my Instagram. It's Mariana Elosúa, or email, which is marianaelosua@gmail.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being in this space.
Thank you so much.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you walk away with some fresh insights, feel inspired, and a little more empowered to take the next step on your artistic journey. Remember, whether it's a small shift or a big breakthrough, every step forward counts. You've got this, and we're here cheering you on every step of the way. If you found today's episode helpful, don't forget to hit subscribe so you'll never miss out on the discussions we have each week. And if something today really resonated with you, please leave us a review. It truly is one of the best ways to help other artists find our podcast and join in on the conversations. Plus, we feel the love too when you do. And don't keep all this goodness to yourself. Share this episode with your people or post about it on social media. Be sure to tag at Empowered Artist Collective and at @JenniferApple_ so we can see what's landing for you and keep the conversation going. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being a part of this incredible community. Keep creating, keep thriving, stay empowered. I'm Jennifer Apple. Until next time.